Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Blaine Bowman, and I am from Pavion, and I'm thrilled you're joining us today for what promises to be a very insightful and practical conversation around RTLS, or real-time location systems in healthcare. Now, if that term's new to you, don't worry, we're going to be breaking it all down. You'll learn how RTLS is reshaping hospital operations, improving patient care, and let's be honest, saving a lot of time and stress for healthcare professionals across the board. In today's lineup, we've got some of the top minds from Pavion, Brian Small and Heather Bratcher. They're going to walk us through how RTLS technology actually works and integrates within hospital workflows. We're then going to hand it over to Jeannie Kramer at Midmark on the direct impact of RTLS and how and what it's doing to shape staff satisfaction and patient outcomes. And spoiler alert, everyone, it is impressive, so gear up for that. We're also going to hear directly from one of our customers, Matt, from Centara Health, who will share their real-world experience and results they've seen since implementing RTLS. And there's nothing like hearing it straight from someone who's been in the trenches. I also want to let everybody know that we will have a Q&A chat going throughout the conversation today. So if you have any questions as we're talking, feel free to drop those questions into the chat, and we would be happy to answer those questions. We are also going to have a live Q&A session at the end. So if you'd like to save your question for then, feel free to do so. Put it in the chat. And again, we are more than happy to answer any and all of your questions. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian Small and Heather Bratcher. They're going to walk us through RTLS and how that technology works.
Okay. Thank you very much, Blaine. And good afternoon, everybody. From not sunny Massachusetts, where we've learned to not put our sweaters away until after the Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully, I didn't jinx that. But let's get right into this here. So just a little bit more about me, and thank you for that, Blaine. Very nice. I've been in the RTLS space for over 25 years, 17 of them right here at Pavion. Started off installing in the late 90s, literally above the ceiling, pulling cable, and have been involved in every other phase of an installation since. But now my focus and really my passion is on helping hospitals operate smarter and more efficiently, harnessing the powers of RTLS technology. And that's what brings me here. So the question at hand, why choose Pavion for your RTLS needs? Well, I think it breaks down to maybe two things. First off, it's our ability to deliver. We're one of the nation's top integrators of RTLS solutions. We have a proven track record of delivering meaningful results, and we do what we say. And that's what we have Matt here, Matt from Centara Healthcare. He's here to speak on, to kind of hold me to that on his testimonial. We have lots of industry experts here at Pavion, and we have seen it all. A lot of triumphs, some challenges, and maybe once or twice some occasional hiccups. But we've distilled all of those hard-earned lessons and really refined it into an elegant approach. And that's what brings me to the second reason. It's our approach to the long-term success. And before I hand it over to Heather, I'm going to kind of provide an overview of what that Pavion professional experience is, and then hand it over to Heather. So very talented user consultant here, end user consultant, and she's going to give you some real world insights and success stories right from the field. So guys, bottom line, RTLS, it can be a complex proposition. There's multiple use cases. Nurse call automation, there's staff RS, obviously asset tracking and management, and patient flow. And we have our partner Midmark here, and they're going to kind of run you through all of those use cases. But it also affects multiple operational units within a hospital. So it could be clinical, you know, where's the stuff I need, or just knowing that there's always going to be an IV pump in the clean utility route, or for clinical engineering, your biomed people, you know, where's the thing I need to PM? for bed management people, do we have enough bariatric beds? Do we need to order another one? Or even supply chain, like why am I buying so many telepocs here? Is it due to shrinkage? Are we utilizing these enough? And of course, with the complex, with that comes challenges. And of course, staff adoption being a huge one, and workflow disruptions. That's difficult. That can lead to this technology becoming another expensive, underused tool. But with the right approach, a people process first mindset, and the right technology, our partner Midmark, who will be speaking shortly, RTLS really does have the power to revolutionize healthcare. And that's who we are. That's who Pavion is. We're your partner. We're the ones who are going to bring this all together and provide the innovation. We're going to find the solution, and we're going to have it scale to your future needs. And that's kind of what I'm depicting here in this illustration. But so how do we do it? Great question. Next slide. Well, the slide before this, please, Blaine. So it's really the 3 pillars of success. And this is what the Pavion service is. So it's a comprehensive readiness assessment, right? So some people call this an operational workflow analysis, where we're coming on site, meeting with key stakeholders, asking the right questions, and compiling that information, identifying workflow panels, identifying what some quick wins would be that align with the long-term goals, and maybe even providing some remediation immediately. And then the second phase really it's the strategy, it's the implementation. It's designing a lean infrastructure. Let's put the technology in that we need to solve the problems and then scale it accordingly. Let's document, let's memorialize the initiatives and the path to get there. Let's set very clear criteria for success and milestone gates. Let's earn the right to take the next step. And of course, all the user training and implementation support, that's obviously very big and important. And then of course, the third leg of that is it's the continuous optimization of the solution. It's change management. That's huge. It's helping you train your staff members on new feedback. It's where our opportunities for the biggest impact that we can make with this technology and with this investment. So this is sort of, and we're going to get into some of the details here as we hand it off, but these are the pillars of success. And why is it important? Now we can go to that slide, Blaine. Well, according to this guy, the first rule of any technology used in business, automation applied to an efficient operation magnifies efficiency. And the second is that automation applied to inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Heather. She's going to give you some real life experience of a day in the life of a Pavion end user experience consultant.
Hi, thank you, Brian. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, thank you for having me. My name is Heather Bratcher. I'm a registered nurse with a little over 10 years of bedside clinical experience, ranging anywhere from ambulatory surgery to intensive care. So I bring with me a unique clinical perspective to the work that I do. So I started with Systems Electronics, now Pavion, in 2021 in the role of a clinical applications specialist, and I now work as a user experience consultant for Pavion. But what does that exactly mean? So my area of expertise is in clinical system design, implementation, education, and then workflow process improvement. It's primarily focused on inpatient healthcare settings, but I do also do some work with medical office buildings and long-term care facilities as well. You just heard Brian mention that Pavion is your go-to for integrating RTLS into your nurse call system. And I want to spend my time today reviewing how, if done properly, RTLS can absolutely have a positive impact and deliver a better experience for a hospital or a healthcare system as a whole. But in order to do that, I think it's important to first look at some common misconceptions related to RTLS that I've encountered from the workforce, and also look at some unique problems that present us and some ways that we found to overcome those, just working on a project by project basis. But like I said, let's first start with looking at some common misconceptions related to RTLS. And in order to do this, I have to share with you a very, oh so very humbling clinical admission. So when I was a fairly new nurse, I learned how to titrate drips. I learned how to do CPR and did chest compressions on a nearly daily basis. But I never once was taught anything about the RTLS system my hospital was using. I didn't know what it was for, and I certainly didn't understand how it could help me. The only thing that I knew was I had some coworkers who would call it the tracer tag. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I did not like the sound of that. Even to this day, I still hear some clinical people say, oh, that's just Big Brother watching us, or something to the effect of, why do you need to know where I am every second that I'm here? I'm good at my job. Just let me go do it. But you know what? It's not their fault for having that mentality. In addition, sometimes I'll go and I'll speak to new hires, or prior to implementation, I'll ask people, hey, do you actually know what the badge does? And a lot of times I do get an answer that goes something like, well, I'm not really sure. I just know that if I don't wear it, my manager writes me up. And again, it's not their fault. Uh, they just weren't trained properly on how the RTLS system can help them. So, in order to use RTLS to the fullest extent, you really have to understand these common misconceptions that you hear from clinical staff and then design workflows and education programs that speak to them on a personal level. And that's the key when you're looking at RTLS. You have to address how it's going to solve problems from a day-to-day personal clinical perspective. So how can RTLS help? How is it more than just a tracer tag? Now, I know Jeannie with Midmark is going to go into more detail on the specifics of RTLS systems, but I do want to briefly touch on a couple of things. First being, we talked about you have to appeal to our healthcare workers on a personal level. So let's confront one of the main problems that we see occurring, clinically speaking, and then some unique ways that we can use RTLS to help overcome these challenges. Okay, next slide. So we want to talk about the main problem that we're having, other than the misconceptions, is this ever-increasing task burden that's being placed on our clinicians. So in a typical inpatient setting, our RNs and our CNAs are being asked to do a lot at any given point in time. And the tasks they're being asked to do are not bad things. They're research, evidence-based, and have proven to increase patient outcomes, but they're adding to that task burden nonetheless. In addition, if you're looking at the acuity of the average medical surgical patient, it's significantly more than it was 10 to 15 years ago. So that means more comorbidities, it means more equipment needed at the bedside, and it also means more time needed inside that patient's room, all adding to this task burden. So how can we help? It's my job to come in and identify a way to use the RTLS system to decrease this task burden, to help save time, because that's better for the patients, it's going to be better for the clinical staff, and it's better for the corner office. So we've talked about misconceptions. We've talked about the number one problem is the task burden that's facing our clinical staff. Let's look at some of the ways we can take the load off the clinical staff and meet them and solve problems at a personal level. So one of the first ones that you see here is the call auto cancellation. From looking at research for a lot of my facilities, patient-initiated calls do make up a majority of nurse call events. And auto cancellation allows those calls to be exactly that, canceled simply by a staff member registering in the room. So we're talking a huge time saving so they don't have to cancel that call inside the room. And also we're cutting down on the alarm fatigue, which is, if you've been in a hospital, it's a huge issue right now. And building on top of that, we have the staff safety. So we talked a minute ago about how the patient acuity is higher. We're having more and more equipment in the room than we ever did before. And that means more things for our clinical staff to have to climb over and under to get to that cancel button on the head wall. We all know that that can be dangerous. Slips, trips, and falls events do happen, and those are costly for everybody that's involved. So we're helping save time, we're helping make things a little bit safer, and asset tracking, that almost speaks for itself. Asset tracking, if you've ever worked in a hospital, you understand how much time you spend actually looking for equipment, and when you actually locate it, you really are hoping that it's clean and ready to go. So that is a huge plus for RTLS. And then looking at reports. So reporting is one of the strongest areas for RTLS. Reporting gathers this data that we can use. It's highly accurate data that we can use for both staff and assets and analyze this to improve workflows. Maybe we're starting something new. Maybe we're reframing something if our metrics aren't being met. Or maybe it's something down to a specific level of restructuring our staffing ratios. So you can see the importance of the data that you can gain from the RTLS. In addition, it also provides a paper trail for rooms, visits to a patient rooms, time spent in rooms, and it can absolutely protect staff if you get into a sticky situation. And last but not least, the one thing I want to talk about that's going to help address things at a personal level is the burden of the device overload. With the recent technology boom, we have a lot of different ways of gaining some great data inside our hospitals and healthcare systems. But the problem with that stems from each of these manufacturers has a device that they like clinical staff to wear, which adds to the burden. If you already have your hospital badge and you have a lot of different pieces of equipment and the supplies that you need to help care for patients, it's a lot to cart around on a shift-by-shift basis. So by partnering with RTLS vendors such as Midmark, we can combine a lot of these devices down into one, significantly decreasing the device overload that our clinical staff is facing. So those are some ways that we're addressing things on a more personal level, but we also want to look at it lastly from building a teamwork mentality. So when you design a system and if you do it properly and have an education plan that really goes through how to use it, you can use this to help address patient calls in a quicker way. So for example, if you have a nurse that's in an isolation room, or maybe she's in a sterile procedure, or even on a break, understanding what's going on with that staff member, a charge nurse, or a unit secretary can help reallocate that personnel to answer patient calls quicker. Because we all know that patient calls that are answered quicker lead to higher patient satisfaction scores, which leads to higher funding for the hospitals. So a huge thing here, not just with our clinical staff, but also with our assets as well. So those were a few things that I wanted to touch on today. I know I only have a little bit of time, but I did want to make sure that we understand that RTLS is not Big Brother. And when we're designing systems, we really need to make sure that we're approaching this from solving the personal level. And it can transfer from the personal level up to the unit level, hospital, and health system wide as well. So I won't go into much more detail because I know Jeannie with Midmark is going to take over from here, but thank you for your time and for having me today. And I look forward to any questions that you might have. Reach out at any time.
Heather, that was a great introduction, and I really appreciate your perspective as a nurse. I wholeheartedly believe in what you said. RTLS is not about Big Brother or tracking nurses. What we do at Midmark RTLS is really to relieve the burden on nurses. So sorry, I'll introduce myself really quickly. I'm Jeannie Kramer. I've been with Midmark RTLS, formerly Versus Technology, for 15 years. And in that time, I've done everything from field implementation to end user education, technical writing, marketing, and probably a little bit more here and there. But in my current role as a marketing product manager, I'm taking that culmination of all the knowledge I've learned over the past 15 years to really take the customer needs and translate them into solutions. And that's what I'm going to discuss today are the RTLS solutions that can relieve that nursing burden. But first, a little bit about Midmark. We are an expert partner in the RTLS space with a nationwide network of system integrators like Pavion, who provide additional expertise and local support from experts like Brian and Heather. We believe together that the key to success with RTLS is just about the right partner and process as much as the technology. But the technology is important too. And we take a long-term approach when it comes to RTLS in healthcare. It starts with our deep expertise. The parent company of Midmark RTLS, Midmark Corporation, is a global entity with more than 55 years of healthcare experience. And on the right, you see the Midmark Experience Center, where visitors can not only see a live RTLS deployment, but also the breadth of Midmark products across the healthcare ecosystem. And Midmark RTLS, our team has specifically been providing real-time locating solutions to healthcare for more than 30 years, and we were a pioneer in this space. That length of experience is unmatched, and it informs our strategic vision and our investments in next-generation technologies, as well as all of the engagements that we have with our customers through our systems integrators like Pavion. And together, we provide that deep clinical and operational experience, as well as all of this best practice knowledge that we've gained over the past 30 years and that we guide our customers with. And all of that comes together in our passion to align people and process, improving the patient experience, staff satisfaction, and operational efficiency. So that passion is really well recognized in the space. We are exceedingly proud that many of the top health systems use Midmark RTLS to optimize operations, and we're consistently ranked in the top RTLS vendors by class year after year. Gartner has recognized us as a visionary because of our deep understanding of the healthcare landscape and trends in RTLS technology. And just this year in 2025, we were the first RTLS vendor to receive the Epic Toolbox designation, meaning our interface meets Epic's recommended best practices for RTLS integrations, and that means we're providing patient, staff, and asset location data right into the EMR where your clinicians are working every day. And when we think about our RTLS solutions, and my goal as we develop and improve our solutions, it's to do so with the goals that all health systems aspire to. The first, the biggest issue in healthcare today that I'm sure you all are very acutely aware of is staffing. We need to do a better job of employee retention and staff satisfaction. And then, of course, efficiency, right? How can we work smarter, not harder, with the staff that we do have? Quality of care, always top of mind, improving that patient experience, making sure our patients are safe and receiving the best care possible, and profitability, because without margin, there really is no mission. And as we talk through our solutions today to kind of give you a flavor of what RTLS can do, we'll talk about a wide range of use cases that enhance those goals with location data. So high ROI solutions like asset tracking, critical safety solutions like staff duress, and complex solutions like patient flow optimization. These solutions are designed to both share data across the healthcare ecosystem and also capture data to drive better decision-making both in real time and through historical data review. But how do we do this with RTLS? So if you're not super familiar with real-time locating systems, at its core, you might think of it as a simple tracking system. Badges worn by staff and tags attached to equipment emit signals that are read by sensors or readers in the environment. These are often in the ceiling or plugged into standard outlets. But this location data is used for more than just tracking, and it's not really about tracking. It is about intelligent decision-making with accurate, reliable operational data. And that is where RTLS comes in with its most basic abilities. So when you think about, just knowing the location of things, We can provide software that's easy for both biomedical and nursing teams to use, where they can search for staff or equipment by type or by a specific identifier, such as a serial number. So no more calling around or aimless searching. And we can even integrate this location data into the CMMS software that biomedical teams use, or into the EMR that the clinical teams are using for greater efficiency. Now, RTLS can also help those nurses find equipment, but what if that IV pump the patient needs is on another floor or across the hospital? Retrieving it can still delay patient care, and that's where PAR management comes into play. PAR stands for Periodic Automatic Replenishment. And when you apply this concept to equipment like IV pumps, we can monitor inventory across the hospital, looking at which units are running low on inventory and which have excess. And that way, pumps can be proactively redistributed to where they're needed. In fact, with a well-executed PAR management program, nurses don't even have to consult the RTLS software to find the equipment they need because it's already stocked and ready to go in the unit's clean supply closet. And speaking of nurses, RTLS has several benefits that enhance their daily workflow, including nurse call automation. So without RTLS, when responding to a patient call, the nurse has to reach the cancel button on the head wall. And Heather made a great point. It sounds easy, but it's often not. Consider all of the medical devices and wires surrounding the patient bed, not to mention the bedside table. Asking the nurse to reach around all of those things countless times per day, not only increases the burden on nursing, but does increase the likelihood of those slips, trips, and falls. And pressing that button on the head wall also drives one of the key metrics tracked on nursing units, which is response times. And if you think about it, let's say a fall risk patient is getting out of bed or the patient needs other immediate assistance. The first thing the nurse is going to do is focus on that patient, not press the cancel button. And that can skew those response time metrics. So when we add RTLS to this picture, all the nurse has to do is enter the room and focus on the patient. We send the nurse's location to the nurse call system, and that cues the nurse call system to clear that call. The response time is automatically recorded, so that KPI is now based on accurate data versus a manual button push. And nurses are relieved of one more burden. Now imagine that nurse is providing care and she removes the blood oxygen sensor from the patient's finger. In a normal situation, not only does the monitoring device in the room begin beeping, very annoyingly, it's also going to trigger an alert to the nurse's phone, contributing to that phenomenon that we know as alarm fatigue. And that's when we tend to tune out alarms because we get so many of them. And that increases the risk that we're going to ignore an important patient safety alert. But in this situation, if your alarm management system knows that the nurse is in the patient room, data that we provide with RTLS, it can suppress that notification from going to the nurse's phone. And that way she can focus on patient care without extra distraction and without wondering if that notification that she just got is about that beeping device in the room or if it's something she truly needs to pay attention to. And then with that same locating badge used for nurse call automation and alarm management, CareFlow Staff Duress provides staff members assurance that they need, that they can get help when needed, so that alert messages are discreetly delivered to someone that can respond efficiently. And I love how Heather mentioned, let's not make nurses wear many, many badges, right? Sometimes you see nurses and it looks like they've got like a Batman belt on with all of these different things. Let's talk about one device that can do multiple things. So with this staff duress system, when a staff member presses the button on their RTLS badge, if you want to go to the next slide, alerts are sent to both the nurse's station and to security, as well as mobile devices through that middleware that we interface with. That increases awareness and response times to duress incidents, and that means staff can get help before violence escalates to the point of injury. And if you happen to be familiar with mid-mark staff duress technology, wanted to do a quick plug and let you know that we just released a new version of our solution that includes centralized monitoring of duress alerts and other really key improvements. And if we go to the next slide, last use case that we're going to talk about today, the benefits of RTLS aren't just for hospitals, they also extend to the outpatient environment. And with the visibility that RTLS provides to the location of staff and patients, clinics in particular can begin to adopt new concepts in workflow. So things like self-rooming, where the patient goes straight to the exam room, bypassing the waiting area altogether, or collaborative care models, where the patient stays in the patient room and services such as phlebotomy and imaging come to them. Or dynamic room assignments, where instead of the typical practice of dedicating multiple rooms to a single physician, which leads to rooms often sitting empty, patients are placed in the first available room, which increases room utilization and allows more providers to practice in the same space. RTLS aids these innovative workflow models by replacing inefficient manual communication in clinics, emergency departments, and ORs with patient status boards that automatically update and cue staff as the patient moves through the stages of care. So we have process arrows and check marks to indicate which parts of the patient visit are in process based on the patient's location and which are complete. And then by monitoring which staff members are in the same location with the patient, we can communicate who has already seen the patient, who is currently with them, and who needs to see them next. And that helps keep the care team in sync and the patient visit progressing. And all the while, we're monitoring patient wait time and patient alone time so that staff can be proactive in improving the patient experience. At the same time, with that Epic toolbox or even into other EMRs such as Cerner, Meditech, et cetera, we can deliver patient location into that EMR. And that reduces the manual data entry and clicking of patients from one stage of care to the next that staff typically perform. So instead of typing in what time the physician started the visit, RTLS can automatically add that data based on the physician entering the exam room. And that concept extends to not only clinics, but to the hospital, where we can automatically timestamp patient arrival in an ED exam room in pre-op or post-op. And instead of assigning a patient to a bed manually in the EMR, we can automatically assign that bed to the patient based on their location in the patient room. This increases the accuracy of data in the EMR while reducing the administrative burden on staff. And then while we're collecting and displaying location-based intelligence in real time, we're also collecting a wealth of data behind the scenes that can be mined for actionable insights to help improve operations. How much time are your nurses spending in the bedside? How often are your IV pumps actually used? Using that data to help understand do we need to relieve more of the burden on nurses so they can spend more time in the patient room? Do we need to buy more IV pumps, or do we just need to redistribute them more evenly across the hospital? This data can really deliver some actionable insights to help improve operations. And I want to make sure everyone's aware that when choosing an RTLS technology, it's important to note that not all real-time locating systems are made equal. And not to say that Midmark, is the only one that can do it all, but we all, as RTLS vendors, provide different technologies and different levels of locating precision. And we need to make sure that that locating precision that we deliver matches your goals. So I'm actually going to start on the right side of this diagram with the room level and bed and chair level technologies. These are the traditional RTLS technologies that have been on the market for some time. At Midmark, we use infrared. And infrared and other technologies like it produce highly accurate location data that can do everything we've talked about today. But there is a trade-off. They can be expensive to install because you're deploying proprietary hardware throughout the hospital. And this expense has been honestly a limiter to the potential of RTLS in healthcare. And then skipping over to the far left, we have what I call zone level technology, and that uses Wi-Fi signals. So a lot of hospitals have tried this type of tracking. It's been on the market for some time. It's easy and relatively inexpensive to do with your existing Wi-Fi networking environment. The trade-off is it's not very precise. Wi-Fi based RTLS, where we're tracking Wi-Fi signals that are emitted in the environment, basically triangulates the location of that Wi-Fi signal, and it's estimating the location. So typically it's only accurate within 5 to 15 meters. So if I'm looking for an IV pump and it tells me it's in patient room 101, it might actually be several rooms away from that patient room, or it may even be on the floor above or the floor below. So really, we only see that as useful to biomedical teams, right? So they're searching all the time for equipment that needs preventive maintenance, and having some idea of where it's at in the hospital is better than nothing. But if a nurse tried to use that type of system for that location data, it's not going to point her in the, to the exact location of the asset. And we tend to see nurses get frustrated when the equipment is not where the RTLS says it is. So finally, I have what we call near room RTLS, and that uses the latest RTLS technology that's getting a lot of attention in the space now, and that's Bluetooth Low Energy, or BLE for short. This methodology also estimates the location of a tag through a type of triangulation, but thanks to the properties of Bluetooth, we can get much more granular data, and that's within 3 to 5 meters. So if a Bluetooth-based system tells you an IV pump is in a patient room, it's most of the time going to be there, or if it's not, it's in the room next door or in the hallway outside. And this technology has the benefit of being lower cost and easy to install, and it can be provided by existing infrastructure to easily create a facility-wide RTLS. So the latest Wi-Fi systems from Cisco, Juniper, Aruba, and others can read BLE, or you can easily install BLE readers throughout the hospital. It's really fantastic technology for the price when you need to send help to the vicinity of a staffed arrest call, or whether you're looking to locate a patient or an IV pump. But when you think about all of the other high-value workflow automation use cases that we talked about, automatically rooming the patient in the EMR, canceling a patient call when the nurse enters the room, suppressing alarms based on nurse location, optimizing patient flow, all of those high-value use cases really require what I consider room-certain location information. Bluetooth or BLE might be accurate 96% of the time, but if the RTLS clears the wrong patient call 4 out of every 100 times, and you handle hundreds of patient calls per day, Bluetooth really isn't quite good enough to do all of the use cases that we talked about today. So going forward, we see health systems adopting a hybrid approach. So if you go to the next slide, we're talking about using those room-certain technologies where it matters, and that's in the patient care areas, and then using Bluetooth everywhere to create a facility-wide network for staffed arrest and asset tracking. And you can even start with Bluetooth, and then with new advancements, easily add wireless, battery-operated, room-certain technology that's interoperable within the Bluetooth environment. So I hope you learned something today about RTLS and the many things that you can do with it, and about the different RTLS technologies. Very happy to take any questions at the end of the webinar regarding any of this. But from here, I'll hand it back to my colleagues at Pavion.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Moncrief. I'm a senior analyst at Centera Health. I'm excited to share some of our impactful ways we're enhancing patient care and staff efficiency through RTLS technology. One of our most significant advancements is the successful implementation of RTLS across 12 hospitals. The RTL system enables real-time tracking of staff locations and automatically logging their presence into patient rooms. This allows us to streamline workflows by canceling nurse call alerts the moment a staff member enters, while also capturing accurate documentation for routing activities. What makes RTLS even more impactful is the integration with nurse call reports. We can now track response times, identify which staff members respond, and measure the length of interactions, all which directly support improvements in safety, accountability, and patient satisfaction. Probably next slide. Or two more. Another important integration we've introduced is to help reduce time spent searching for equipment is asset tracking. This system is transforming how we manage medical equipment by streamlining access and enabling real-time usage tracking. We significantly reduced equipment loss and improved utilization across departments. No more time searching for critical tools such as wheelchairs, IV pumps, transport chairs, and blood pressure stands. They are now traceable and ready when needed. It's definitely a smart, efficient solution that helps our staff stay focused on what matters, providing exceptional care. Next slide. Our most complex integration with RTLS is alarm suppression, a solution we implemented in some of our most delicate care environments, the NICUs at Sentara Princess Anne and Sentara Norfolk General. This technology was designed to reduce unnecessary interruptions during high-focus tasks, such as medical administration and infant feeding. By intelligently suppressing alerts while the nurse is actively engaged, we reduce alert fatigue and escalation noise across the unit. The result? A calmer, more focused environment with fewer distractions, safer procedures, and more efficient workflows. Alerts are only delivered when the nurse is available to respond, ensuring critical communication is preserved without overwhelming the team. Next slide. I'd like to share with you why we decided to implement alarm suppression in these NICU environments. In the NICU units at Sentara Norfolk General and Sentara Princess Anne, patient care is provided in individual patient rooms. This created a unique challenge. Clinical staff may not hear critical alerts from Philips monitors and ventilators when they're inside these rooms. To address an alerting workflow was created using Engage middleware system. It sends these alerts directly to clinicians' phones. However, shortly after implementation, staff reported an issue. While inside the patient rooms, we were receiving alerts both from clinical equipment and their phones. Also, during procedures while feeding babies, staff were unable to respond to these phone alerts, leading to unnecessary alert escalations to their coworkers. The solution? To reduce alert fatigue and unnecessary escalations, an integration between Midmark and Engage was created. This solution provided real-time location data to Engage based on the nurse's proximity using these Midmark RTLS tags. The smart integration between Midmark RTLS and Engage middleware ensures that alerts reach the right person at the right time without compromising our patient care or our staff focus. I thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to share some of our experiences with RTLS. Back to you, Brian.
All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of today's webinar, and a huge thank you to Brian, Heather, Jeannie, and Matt for their time, insights, and stories. We got to hear about a lot of cool things today. If you're like me, you're probably already thinking about the ripple effects RTLS could have across your hospital, your facility, whether it's improving patient flow, reducing asset headaches, or just giving your staff some breathing room to focus on care. At this time, we're going to open up the floor in the chat to questions and start our Q&A segment. So Jeannie, I know we did get a question about the digital whiteboard. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Do you want to elaborate on your answer there?
Yeah, sure. So the question in chat was, is the digital whiteboard a Midmark product? And yes, the one I showed when we were talking about patient flow is the Midmark software. It's called CareFlow Patient Flow. And it's a digital whiteboard that we use to cue staff on patient flow or patient status, as well as room status. And we use that in EDs, ORs, ASCs, and outpatient clinics. The other option that you have is to integrate and send location data into your EMR's digital whiteboard or other whiteboard vendors that you may already use to automate those systems.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeannie.
Mhm.
Again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're more than happy to answer, clarify, or elaborate on anything we talked about today. So we have a question from Antonio. It says, will you be sending out a copy of this presentation? And where can I get specific details, parts, cost, etc.? Brian, Heather, do you guys want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, we're more than happy to send out, the presentation. I think there's more of an overview perspective here. But if you can give us a little bit more information on what you're looking for, I think we can customize it, put it together for you, and give you, something that's more meaningful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Brian. We have another question. It says, with asset tagging, can we also see data on MRI, such as number of patients per day, in order to understand usage of the equipment and make sure the maintenance is done on time?
I can attempt to answer that one. So, I think the key to doing this, and Brian or Heather, if you have any other thoughts on this, I think we would have to badge the patients and actually have the patients wearing badges, and then we could see how many patients are going into the MRI space per day, and that would give you the data that you're looking for. Just putting a tag on the MRI itself is not going to tell you how many patients are using it.
But and I would agree. I would add to it also. It's a really good question because it is in the direction of where it's going. Because really, what we're providing is that location awareness. So that with these other systems, yeah, it is part of the solution, but not directly.
And I saw Matt popped in a question, and he made a good point. The badges are typically not MRI safe, right? So you're not going to put the badge on the patient while they're getting an MRI. But what we typically do is you would place the badge in a special location that is a proxy for MRI while the patient is receiving that service. And that proxy location can give you that count.
That's great. Antonio had responded to you, Brian. He said, thank you. Looking for something high level that I can share with potential clients to initiate the discussion.
Yeah, we could put together a couple Pavilion slides that give you an overview of this, the service we're providing, some of the problems we're looking to solve. Absolutely. Now, how can I get that out to you? How can we condense and distribute accordingly? Is there a contact info there?
We can, Brian, we can probably grab that from after the webinar from the registrant list. So we'll reach out to you, Antonio. We have another question here. Are there any metrics or tools to calculate ROIs when trying to implement or budget for an RTLS system?
And
So
that's
absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Brian. You go
I know
for it.
you see how excited we both got right there? We both were chomping at the bit to get to that one. And I'll hand this right to you, Jeannie, because I know that you guys do, but that's such a loaded question because that's the complexity of the RTLS system and the value that it can provide. There's so many different ways that you can, there's so many different, it really depends on exactly what it is are you looking to reduce losing things? It really needs to be defined, but that said, my point is it's a bigger conversation, and we can help you kind of get through that and validate that. But that said, Jeannie, go ahead and
Yeah, so we do have an ROI calculator specifically for asset tracking. So that one is the easiest use case to really quantify as far as, having to purchase less equipment, having, saving time for your biomed team, saving time for your nursing team. A lot of the other RTLS use cases, we have, definitely have seen customers have that ROI, and we can share those case studies for sure.
We got one final question here. It asks about references worldwide. Is there, if there's anybody that we could point to?
Yeah, and I see Jean-Sebastian has a follow-up question as well. So Midmark RTLS specifically works in North America, so we do not have an international presence. And we have about 1,100 installations throughout the US and Canada.
Great. We also have, how many installations do you have in regarding to your ROI tracking for assets? How do you calculate it then? It might be based on patient data.
In regards to ROI tracking, how do you calculate it? So our ROI calculator is based upon some statistics. For example, nurses spend at least 30 minutes per shift looking for equipment. So we calculate that into, time savings and the amount of time that your nurses are not spending in patient care. Then we also look at purchasing extra equipment. So it's generally accepted that hospitals purchase about 20% more equipment than they actually need in order to just make sure it's available when it's needed. And often that doesn't even do the job, because we all know that nurses can never find an IV pump when they need one. So we use those type of statistics in order to calculate that ROI, time savings, and then savings on purchasing extra equipment and renting as well. So if you're some hospitals do rent a lot of equipment in order to fill that gap.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeannie. Amy, I do see that you'd like to see a case study for ROI. I'm gonna make sure that I make a note, and we'll reach out to you on that. A great celebration. Thanks so much for the great webinar. Brian, they'll be in touch. Jeannie, they'll be in touch.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions. Really appreciate
awesome.
Everyone's time and engagement today.
thanks everybody.
So before we wrap up completely, just a reminder, whether you weren't able to answer the question or ask your question because of maybe you're mobile and you're listening there, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to keep the conversation going. You can reach out if you have any questions to marketing@pavion.com. We'll be sure to get you in contact with the right person. We're here to help you explore what's possible in the world of RTLS and how it might fit your specific needs today and long term, and make sure that you and your facility are set up for success. But thanks again for being with us here today. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.